I'm Tim Scoggins, Chairman of the Shaftsbury Select Board, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:35 on Monday, November 4th, 2019. First, let me check, does any member of the board have a conflict of interest with anything appearing on the agenda this evening?
No.
No. Minutes, we have one set of minutes to approve from our last meeting on 10/21 that were circulated. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Art.
Second.
Second by Ken. Any discussion, additions, or corrections to the minutes that were circulated for October 21?
Who was here? I wasn't here, I don't think.
We need Tim, Ken, and Tony. Oops, okay.
We don't have it.
We don't have enough. Okay. We will save those for another day. Thank you, Art. Warrants. First up, I have payroll warrant number 8 in the amount of $21,814.84.
So moved.
Motion approved from Art.
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Any discussion on the payroll? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
So payroll warrant number 8 in the amount of $21,814.84 is approved 400. Next, I have payroll warrant number 9 in the amount of $22,573.78.
So moved.
Motion to approve from Art.
Second.
Seconded by Joe. Any discussion on the payroll? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
So payroll warrant number 9 in the amount of $22,573.78 is approved 400. And next I have check warrant number 11 in the amount of $118,075.71.
So moved.
Motion to approve from Art.
Second.
Second by Joe. Items over $1,000 include AK Agri Services. There are 3 charges there.
Hauling and gravel.
Hauling gravel. Bennington County, it says county tax, that's $13,000. 2,200 to Bennington County, it says Shaftsbury ID, that must be school tax.
It's the 2 districts.
That would be for school tax?
No, that's...
Oh, Bennington County,
Bennington
county tax, Shaftsbury
Is the 2
ID
districts,
tax.
yeah.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. 1,100 to GA Bow Fuels, 1,100 to John Soretta Excavation, 1,400 to Morse Repair, 4,400 to Northeast Plumbing and Heating. What would that one be?
I recall, what did we pay Northeast Plumbing Heating? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that. I'm gonna have to pull that out to look at that.
What was one that was repaired?
Sorry,
What's repaired?
that was truck 3, I believe.
Did they clean the furnace?
Yeah, but that was only a few $100.
Okay.
Okay, I can dig in here in a second. 2,100 to Sycamore Landscaping for October cemetery mowing. 1,900 to Wallingford Crushed Stone. 76,000 to Weaver Excavating.
That was the
Shaftsbury Hollow
project.
Completed.
It's completed, yeah.
2,200 to William E. Daly.
How much of that do we get, the whole thing, or just 90% of it? Or
The hollow is all on us,
okay.
yeah.
Yep.
So that was Northeast Plumbing.
They did the engineering, and that's all. The state,
Yeah, the state just designed it for us.
They designed that French drain though.
Dave, you think you
Yeah,
can find it
sure.
quicker than I could?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not lined up here, sorry. Northeast Plumbing was $120.
So that's better.
Pete's is $4,400.
Oh, Pete's was the tires for the grader. Okay, well, that's easier.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
You had me going.
It's not like Dave to forget a $4,400 expense.
Where did I miss that leak?
Any other discussion on the payroll on the check warrant? All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. So check warrant number 11, the amount of $118,075.71 is approved, 400. Are there any announcements? Okay, any public comments? Okay, item 7, Treasurer's Report. Melanie?
So
hello, Mel.
let's look at the cash flow if you want to. There we go. Yeah, that one number sort of jumps out at you.
Right, 2 million?
Yeah, so I've
Like you're
been
most of the way there.
collecting a lot of money. I processed $600,000 just today, so that's in obviously November's cash flow. So it's coming in pretty well. It breaks my heart that a bunch of people have come in and looked at their tax bill for the first time that day and see that they are paying non-residential education and there's nothing they can do about it at this point. It's the absolute drop dead date is October 15th, and you can't make any changes after that. So please next year look at your tax bills when you first receive them, and if there are any problems, you can still fix them then. I just hate that it's happening a lot this year. And something that I've noticed is that a lot of them say that they have tax preparers from out of state. I strongly recommend people to use Vermont tax preparers because they know about the homestead declaration, and you have a tax preparer in Minnesota, they're not going to know about that. So, hire local. I hate having to tell them there's nothing I can do about it. Of course, there's nothing I could do about it anyway, but nobody can do anything about it now.
Right.
So let's look down at the bottom of that. There's you can see as of the end of October, we had almost $3 million, but that's still less than half. So as of today, we're I think at about 58%, but that tells you what the next 4 days are going to be like for me. I'll remind everybody that they have until 5 o'clock. There will be somebody in the office. If you want to have that personal touch, you have until 5 p.m. After 5, if you put it in the box, it will be considered past due. If it's in the mail, I accept postmark, so there'll still be I'll still be processing into next week. So just get to the post office before they close and you'll still be fine. You can also pay online until midnight. So if you're really stuck, that's always an option. A lot more people are using the e-check option rather than the credit card because it's basically a bank transfer, and it's only $1.50 for a charge for that. So we're seeing a lot of them coming through, and I strongly recommend that for if you're not getting lots of frequent flyer points or something. That's really a really good option, and I'm glad to see so many people are taking advantage of it. I don't have anything else to say. It's all taxes all the time. You can look at the budget versus actuals, where a little ahead on revenues and a little ahead of expenditures, but those are, the expenditures are probably just a timing issue and probably the same for revenues. That's probably just a function of my having gotten the tax bills out earlier this year, so we've gotten a little bit more earlier. But nothing there of any note. It's right on track for where we should be for budget. If you want to look at the reserve, I don't think much went on in October. It's basically, we've already talked about it, it's mostly just late water collections. Of course, water bills go out in November, so we'll be right after taxes are due, water is due. And still, I think Jim is spending a lot of time trying to round up the last of the delinquent water payments before the new ones go out. That's taking a lot of his time. So that's all I have. I don't have anything else. It's just taxes. Any questions?
Anything for Melanie?
No.
Okay.
How much of a problem is it for you with the water bills going out?
Oh, it's
Just, right now versus
it's not I'm not actually the one who sends them out. Joanne does that. I think it upsets people that they have to turn around, so I get some anger, but it's not hard. It's just
Well, no, I mean, I didn't know if there was any way we could change it maybe a little bit, so.
No, it's because there's an absolute end point with taxes, so it just, you transition from one to the other.
Just quits all at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right.
I wish people didn't get mad at me, but, it goes with the territory.
You get used to it. You can't get away from it there.
That's right. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are due to have a hearing on the town plan at 7 o'clock, so we're just going to walk through the agenda until 7 o'clock, and then we'll stop and talk to all of our public who showed up tonight about the town plan. Item 8 is roads report.
Okay, the roads report is basically getting equipment ready for winter. They will finish Myers Road tomorrow. I think there's 150 feet on the drain left, so they're going to finish that tomorrow. They're out grading in the Hollow and Boot Pond Hollow and Shaftsbury Hollow today, and Murphy Hill, not Shaftsbury Hollow, Murphy Hill, I think they were both on today. So they're wrapping up the grading before the end of the season. We're getting to that. Cutting off the water in the park, and just getting ready for winter. So we might have flurries by the end of the week, so.
Did Zaluzzi grade like Prairie Road when they put the water line in?
Say that again?
Zaluzzi.
He hired Weaver who
Weaver to do it, yeah. We just scratched it,
He
yeah.
did not grade it.
Yeah.
He just scratched it.
Yeah, we're gonna go back at them about that, and keep an eye on it, because although I've heard they compacted it multiple times when they were doing it, still I want to see it go through the winter.
It hasn't settled.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah, so that's good, but it's supposed to be graded.
Yeah.
And they I don't know if they've patched the paved area yet.
Yes.
Did they? Okay.
Yes.
So we'll keep an eye on that and make sure it gets graded properly. That was part of the agreement.
Yep. Yep.
And then, like I said, the rest of it is basically just getting ready for winter. The new truck should be here in December, maybe sooner. It's hard to say. And
Our back is cleaned up.
our back is all cleaned up now. Notify Mr. Frost
Frost.
that December 1st, this was into this month already, the property's his again. And I am going to look into putting up the 3 vehicles we pulled out from the back, because I've had inquiries about them all, so I'm gonna put them out for bid, either for junk, or some people have been interested in these 2 out here to take, so. We were gonna do it in the spring, but we'll just clear them off the lot right now. The garage has some things stored in it, some just for convenience for the winter, because we'll have to address that in the spring. We still have file cabinets and some things that were moved around from in here, still in there. We're gonna keep the power on for the winter, just because we're afraid to have the doors get stuck in the middle of winter. And that's really about it for the roads this week. It's during a transition time of year. Just get ready, make sure everything's ready to run when the first snow starts coming. The salt's in, the sand is in, so we're in pretty good shape for it.
Were you guys able to satisfy the resident from Shaftsbury Hollow? He's an older gentleman. He was in here talking about trees that got cut down.
Yeah, we went up to see him. I must say, for the frontage of his property, which is for sale, the road is better than it's ever been. The things we cut back have actually improved the front of his property. But I think that's all resolved. We've all spoken to him, yeah. It's normal when trees start coming down, people get a little anxious, but when the trees where the ditch should be, it's kind of a problem, so. No, but he's okay with it now. He cleared it up, actually. I think it looks nicer, so.
Drain the water out of the garage. Did you think to do that?
Yep. We're going to have the water turned off and just leave the power on. No heat. We don't need heat in there. We don't need anything. And then, like I said, in the spring, we'll just auction the remnants of everything, including the building. Hopefully, we'll get a good price for scrap for it. Or people have asked me about hay shed, and it's like, if you can take it down with the proper insurance, we'll move it. Be my guest.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Questions, comments about the roads? Okay.
When was that guardrail going up, Dave?
Well, we're on the list for the company. They're around pounding guardrail, and like I said, Mike's telling me for a company like that, it's like a 6-hour job, so they're just going to show up and, it's kind of, when I moved houses, you do a few big jobs, but you always have this little thing hanging around.
Yeah.
So if you finish early, you just go do it in a day. And they're just going to find us Friday when they finish a job early and just go over and pound it in, I'm sure. But he assures me they can do this anytime. So it's not, for them, it's not much of a job.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
No, it's still on.
I get it on.
It's still on. And I keep reminding Mike, guardrail. I think he's tired of hearing it. But they assure me they're coming.
Question.
Charlie?
The gutters and drainage ditches on the side of the roads, are you guys responsible for cleaning those out of the leaves that are collecting in them, or?
He's got the blower.
Yeah, we have the blower. We blow the leaves off the roads and prior to grading. We don't actually go around and blow the leaves out of all the ditches.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I know some of them are getting,
Yeah, and then that happens. That's why we're getting on more of a routine of getting back to what you should be doing is cleaning the ditches on a program as you go around the town. Because we took our giant buffalo blower up there, all the leaves would be all over the people's lawns, and then they'd be all upset about that. But, they break down, and then when you clean the ditches, if you clean them on a regular basis, then they don't become a problem.
Okay. Next item is hazard mitigation grant.
Yeah, that's the routine. We have to update the town hazard mitigation plan. I have a grant for $7,250.
You have a grant, or you want to apply for a grant?
Well, we have the grant. We applied for it last year. They
Okay.
just got awarded. It's a federal grant, so it takes forever. We just got our portion of it, so I'm going to go out to bid. We're putting an ad in for a bid for this week. It'll just go on the municipal bid site for the state. That's where I've been putting things lately.
Is this for hazardous?
It's a hazard mitigation plan is like an all hazard plan from everything from forest fires to tornadoes to floods to everything. It's an important part for FEMA. if you do have problems, that you've thought about the consequences of different behaviors and how much damage a fire could cause, what's the history. It helps a lot.
So this grant pays for somebody to do
Yeah.
that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and normally, well, it usually goes to the County Regional Commission, but you can't award it to someone, it has to go out to bid, and 99 times out of 100, they're the only ones who bid to do it.
Okay.
So, like I said, there's a state site that you can put bids on, that's where all these went, and BCRC will bid on it, and who else, I don't know.
Okay.
So it's a condition of the grant that it has to go out to bid?
It has to go out to bid, yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Do you want to get into the budget? We're getting close to 7 o'clock. You want to
You want to do the Shires?
skip over and do some of this paperwork stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, Shires paperwork, of that $7 million project, the $500,000 VDCP grant that Shires got, that the town was a conduit for,
Pass through.
has generated paperwork outside its station, you might say. And so we found out we had a couple of things we needed to sign off on. I looked through some of them. They all looked to be really routine things that essentially just turn over all responsibility for stuff to Shires and saying that we're just handing it off to them. Dave, as I characterize that like a good lawyer would?
Yeah, well, I'm aware. It'd probably be best to start with PM4, the resolution to designate a public agency. And what this does is it allows the municipality to assign all responsibility for executing the grant to Shires Housing, Inc. And that requires a vote of the board, and then we'll have that officially recorded by the clerk. And it's basically that the legislative body of this municipality authorizes the chief executive officer to designate the Shires Housing Incorporated that said public agency undertake the following activities: construction of 22 new units of affordable housing to be located on Perrin Road in Shaftsbury, and that the chief executive is hereby authorized on behalf of the municipality to enter into a contract with said public agency for performance of said activities. So this one gives you the right to go to the next one.
Okay. So move.
Motion from Art to sign PM4 relative to the Shires housing grant they're getting from PDCP.
Second.
Second by Joe. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that motion is approved 4-0-0.
And the second part of this would be the VCDP contract for program management, which you've just authorized the town to enter into. The major parts of that are the program manager, which would be Shires, will perform the following required services in the program management of the grant agreement. And that's managing the environmental review, compliance with Davis-Bacon wage rates, securing all required permits, overseeing procurement processes, manage all contracts for construction, oversee the construction process, and arrange for and coordinate legal services. This basically means that Shires will take responsibility for all the federal requirements and state requirements for contracting the project under the grant agreement. And that just requires one signature for the municipality on the last page.
So move.
So I have a motion from Art to allow the chair to sign the VDCP contract for program management.
Second.
Second by Joe. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. So that motion is approved 4-0-0.
And just a footnote to that too, there's a zero cost. It's not like we're paying them to manage it. It's a zero cost to the town to manage it.
Excellent.
Who do they have to show that they're paying Davis-Bacon
Oh,
wages?
there's a huge amount of paperwork that goes on. That's when I got this material, that's why I started reading into it and going to sites and looking at other towns that did this, because if we had to do all this, it would be a huge amount of work. So they're taking it all on. They have to report all this to the state and satisfy the feds with it, so.
Yeah. Well, I worked Davis-Bacon jobs, and they,
Yeah, There's a lot of
a
paperwork.
lot of paperwork to it, and
There are.
it's different in every area.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah.
state, the feds, they set it all up, that's all.
And the next one would be MP1, which is municipal policies and codes. And this is a lengthy document, but it basically says that we believe in equal employment opportunity, fair housing. Most of these are in our own thing. We have a use of excessive force policy. We would have one if we had a law enforcement agency, which we do not. Policy on the use of ECDP funds for federal lobbying. We're not going to do any lobbying of Congress over this. Code of Ethics Administration, drug-free workplace, which is one of our policies, and sub-recipient oversight monitoring policy, which I went through very carefully because, again, that's an area like Davis-Bacon where I don't want to get in a lot of paperwork. So they're responsible for all that stuff, too.
So moved.
Motion from Art to sign off on municipal policies and codes, MP1.
Second?
Second by Joe. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So that motion is approved, 400.
And the final one is a residential anti-displacement and relocation plan. No one was relocated and no one was displaced by the construction of this facility. So it's a requirement that you pass this, but we didn't displace anyone. No one's been relocated. So it doesn't affect.
They bought out the house.
Well, they bought the house, but he wasn't displaced. He sold it.
Okay.
Displaced means, yeah, it means we,
Eminent domain.
eminent domain, yeah.
We kicked all the rabbits out.
Stick leave. The attorney lost the case, though.
And they just ain't what they used to be, Dave.
One behind somewhere.
So is there a motion to accept the residential anti-displacement and relocation plan?
So move.
Moved by Art,
Second?
second by Joe. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Right?
So that motion is approved, 400. All right, Jim, are we broadcasting now? Good, okay.
We're everywhere.
Live on Facebook, the whole thing? Okay, good. Then I will call this hearing on Shaftsbury's town plan to order at 7:02 on Monday, November 4th, 2019. And I have a couple of things to say by way of introduction.
November 4th.
What did I say?
That's the 14th.
I probably did. Can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Bring up a couple of notes here I had. Every 5 years previously, and starting now every 8 years, every town in Vermont is required to generate a town plan that says what their major goals and intentions are for the next 8 years. That is, starts off as a job for the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has been working on this for a year at least. Mike Chianowski of our Planning Commission is here tonight. I want to say a big thank you to all of them. There was a tremendous amount of work in doing that. It's always a tremendous amount of work. It was doubly hard this year because we put to the Planning Commission the task of reorganizing the plan significantly. Previously, the plan part of the town plan was mixed in with the text that described the population and our natural resources and how many miles of road, and in those paragraphs would be things that says the town should maintain the roads to a high degree and things like that. Following the town plan of Brattleboro, the Planning Commission reorganized it so that all of the goals, policies, and actions that are intended to be undertaken by the town in the next 8 years are, first, the goals are listed at the front of the document. Those goals, policies, and actions are delineated at the front of each section, so it's very easy to go in and for us as a board to check our progress over the next 8 years and see if we're doing the things that we're supposed to. So hats off to the Planning Commission. I was with them on a lot of the meetings they had on this. The final document, I think, is just excellent. I really do. I think it's a good document. And I'm proud of the job that they did. I want to point to a few things in terms of goals, policies, and actions that are in the plan that I think are important. There are many more than I will mention, and you can certainly see them in the plan, but these are the ones that I think are particularly important and should be brought to the attention of the Select Board. Under economics, we have a number of charges to try and help improve our economy. At the top of the list, not necessarily the way it's listed in the document, but by everyone's account, the main thing that will help our economy is to attract new population. The main thing that's hurting southern Vermont, Shaftsbury, and Vermont in general is a declining population. And if we can figure out how to attract more people to our area, that's a good thing. And certainly, we all know employers who are trying to find jobs, trying to find people to fill jobs that they have. If we can attract people to the area, that will help our employers. Getting people to come to Shaftsbury and buy houses will increase our grand list and allow us to keep taxes under control. So that's really the big message. So we need to be thinking about how we can do that. And as I've said many times before, the way to attract is to be more attractive. And we are working on those ways to be attractive in some of the other items on here, like better roads and internet and that sort of thing.
Amphitheater.
And what?
Amphitheater. Just kidding.
Amphitheater. Oh, yes. Joe wants an amphitheater at the park, yes.
So we can have concerts. Build it, they will come.
That's right, which leads directly to the next one, which is encourage community involvement. Because a lot of things that happen can't be done by the Select Board saying, let's build an amphitheater at the park. We could, but if we had a lot of people in the room stomping their feet to build an amphitheater at the park, it would be a lot easier to do. So that kind of community involvement in economic development is important, and it can lead to things like fundraising drives to help, raise money for an amphitheater at the park that doesn't require all taxes.
A GoFundMe page.
There you go. And this next one is directly out of the document. Continue to streamline the application process and zoning bylaws to fast-track commercial activities. Later on tonight, we're going to talk about giving the Planning Commission a task to look at some economic development that is not happening right now, that people have expressed an interest in doing through the zoning office, and we want the Planning Commission to help us decide, is it appropriate development that should be allowed in our bylaws that isn't now, and if so, how we go about doing it. Another item we talk about in the document relative to economic development is to engage in regional economic efforts. I've been very involved in regional activities with the Red Group in particular that developed the comprehensive economic development strategy that was put in place this year, which allows people who are seeking federal funding to align themselves with our regional goals in southern Vermont across our two counties of Windham and Bennington County to give those people a leg up in seeking that funding, and to encourage arts and ecotourism as important parts of economic development and community development. Roads is always a big topic with us, and one of the calls in this plan is to develop a capital improvement plan for major road projects, culvert stitching, road base, bridges, those things that we're working on. I would like to see, and the plan calls for us to see a plan. I think a multi-year plan would be appropriate, so we can look at where we want to be in terms of our roads in a few years and how much that's going to cost. Because the next item that's in the plan is consider increasing spending on road infrastructure. And we've talked about that many times in the meetings here, that we're putting the crew where they ought to be doing the maintenance, ditching and brushing and grading. And a lot of the major improvements like we've done this year are done with other funds that and contract labor and materials. Under the facility section, we're calling on to continue to improve and maintain Cole Hall, in particular the exterior and the access. We've been talking a little bit about that, but maintenance is behind on the exterior, and our access, particularly handicap access via the elevator, which is old, near end of life and in the wrong place, and the staircase out here, which is in need of repair. We're looking at getting some outside ideas in order to re-envision this whole exterior of Cole Hall relative to the garage going away, creating more parking, working with the entrances, that sort of thing. The plan calls us to address the transfer station fee structure. We haven't changed the fee structure there in terms of what we pay for a bag of trash in decades. It's probably out of sync with what it ought to be, and garbage collection fees are going up all the time, so we need to look at that. We've also had our auditors tell us that we should control our cash flow there in a different way, is something else that we're looking at there. We want to bring back the swap shed. Everybody wants the swap shed, Dave. We're going to have to do it sooner or later. I think we ought to be looking at the budget we're discussing tonight for putting in what we need to get the swap shed back out there. And I think the best idea is that Shelley gets the new hut, which is part of the swap shed, and she's there in the same room with the swap shed. The big one that's going to be happening over the next couple of decades is the village water main needs replacing. It's at end of life. We have no belief that it's failing, but it's going to take us several decades to replace it, because we want to time that with coming out from under bond debt that we're in now to minimize the cost impact on people. So that's a big one that we're looking at. And tonight, in fact, we are opening bids on the engineering study that's required to make that happen.
I think it's important to say that 2024, they're going to redo Route 7A through the middle of town, and they won't want us to dig up the water, to put a water main in after that.
Right. So we need to get that first part done by then. That's a good point.
I believe the way they got it set up with the 3 different stages, the first we pay the most on, or the bond pays the most on. What was it? They had it so it was timed so we don't get nailed.
Right. There were 2 bonds right now. One is coming off this year, right?
Right.
We're not ready to start right away, but we're thinking that we will keep the water rates where they are and save up for the next bond, and then we hope ramp into the next bond on the water main replacement with more or less the same structure. Well, it's still going to have to increase, but not as much as if we added it to existing bonds.
So with the offset, it's going to really relieve a spike in taxes, yeah.
Right, and so we do that, and then I believe 10 years later, we come out from under the second bond, and at that time, we'll look at the next phase of the replacement.
I thought that's what it was.
And another charge in the plan is to improve broadband internet access. We've talked about that a lot. We know that's a drag on our economy, that there are parts of town that don't have internet access. We know that we lose real estate sales because we don't have that. And we are looking at that, and with the intention of taking advantage of the new broadband bill that went through the legislature to look at, to fund a study that will help us decide how to go about doing that.
Excuse me a second.
Yes.
Dave, did you tell me one time a while ago something about we've been overpaying for water for 20 years?
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, we're gonna have a discussion with, between our water board and their water board on the rate structures.
Yeah.
It's just a question of the contract and the rate structures, but there's a whole
Yeah, I've been talking,
discussion.
So I thought we overpaid. Right?
we're trying to establish what documents govern the water board right now. The one that we have found and that the Bennington Water Department Chair, Steve Goodrich, has confirmed that governs our relationship is a 1968 document that talks about the Shaftsbury Prudential Committee. So he and I have conversed far enough to decide that we do need to update that document. So we're proceeding down that road.
Yeah. I thought that kind of mixed in with what we were saying, but ought to be brought up.
Yeah, there are a number of issues in the document that we'll be looking at. Under recreation, where there's a call to bring back their ice skating rink. We've talked about that for quite a few years. Do you think we can put that in this next budget?
You probably have it up for next winter, not this winter, but the winter after. And then the rec committee is not committed to Cleveland Park. They want to look at the options of putting it in Howard Park also, as a way of drawing people into Howard Park for cross-country skiing and everything else, and the ice rink there, which has a possibility too. Just a reminder, to put the ice rink back in Cleveland Park, we have to resurface the entire ball field there to make it level, because that's why I kept tearing the liner. It's really not a cost function. It's finding the place, and we can get it in. Remember, we have a generous bequest to the town for all work at Howard Park, which we've been doing, and we've through the grant we got for the playground, we've built up the park reserve fund a bit too. So it's a matter of deciding where to put it. And
The nice thing about having it on Cleveland Avenue, though, is you have a lot of the kids in the community
Yes.
can just walk to it.
Yeah.
Versus,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and two, Howard Park, nothing against Howard Park, but when it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. Howard Park has that issue of being really secluded, and you don't see things, so you don't go down there.
No.
We haven't been plowing that in the winter either, have we?
Yeah, but there's definitely, we're going to plow it this winter. There's the requests I keep hearing that people would like to go snowshoeing back there. They'd like to just, practice with the cross-country skis back there.
Well, they don't need to plow then. Get on your snowshoes and get.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it for plowing it, it's like if it's snowing today, don't expect it to be plowed till the day after tomorrow.
Right.
Because it'll be the last thing. When everything's done, we just send the truck down and plow everything
Yeah.
back. But, it's only a few passes with the truck, so it wouldn't be the end of the world to do it. And maybe you get some activity down there in the winter. But again, you're back into, it's like a lot of parks.
Security.
It's open, that's secluded
Yeah.
back there.
Okay.
Well, we'll keep looking at it.
Yeah. I didn't intend to solve the ice rink problem tonight. I just mentioned that it's in there. Yeah. A couple of things on trails that are in there. Develop a trail to the state municipal forest. There's an ancient road that goes from West Mountain up to there that we think could be reestablished and maybe set some trailhead and would lead into an item further down, which is find ways to increase access to the trails on private land. Because there's an extensive trail system in Shaftsbury. People that know about it use it. And we've talked for a while about developing it into an asset that people know about. And but there are issues there. People walking on private land is something that you have to tread carefully on, but it happens, and it would be great, I think, a great attraction to the town if we had a trail system that everybody knew about. You could walk from your backyard to the Appalachian Trail, which you can do if you know the way. And there's a call for better signage for the parks, which I know Dave is working on with the Recreation Committee. And a big one that I'm really proud of the position the board has taken, and now it's in the town plan, is the town should not institute zoning or other ordinances that would limit renewable energy development. The Planning Commission and the Select Board are in agreement that renewable energy, wind and solar are important to our future, and that we are not seeking to limit them or regulate them any more than we do other types of building or industry. And I think that puts us as one of the more forward-looking town plans around in that regard. So those are some of the major items that are in there. Does anyone have any comments about the town plan as it currently stands? We're looking for public input, Charlie, and you're it.
No, I just was curious whether there's a map of the trails that presently exist, so to speak.
There is not, no. One doesn't really exist that we know of. It would be something we would have to develop. Let me see what this is trying to do.
I know the ancient roads are around, but there's some information on that. I don't know
Yeah.
where the other stuff would come together from.
It opened here. Michael, do you have any comments for us?
No, I didn't have anything. I thought somebody should be here. I thought more people would be in terms of the planning commission itself.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, I can be the representative.
There were a handful of edits that the select board made to the document we received from the planning commission. Do you have any comments on the edits that we made? Ones that you feel like we got off course and maybe should reconsider?
No, I don't have any specific comments other than that I think the planning commission is required to respond, and I think we were leaning toward endorsing whatever the BCRC, whatever modifications they had to your initial deletions, just to keep the process moving.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's where we came down. I don't want to speak for, we didn't vote on that or anything, but I think the idea was to get the BCRC's response, endorse that as the planning commission's response, and keep the process moving.
Yeah, and I have met with BCRC, and I have some edits in here that reflect their opinion about what some changes that they wanted to see put back in there, and they're in this document. That's not directly part of this hearing. This hearing is addressing the plan as it was published, but once we conclude with this hearing, we can go through this document and discuss these changes, and I hope come out with a new draft tonight that will go forward to the next hearing, which is on December 2nd. The select board is required to hold 2 hearings on the plan. And yes, BCRC did agree that the plan satisfies state requirements. And in fact, I think the changes that we made, without these additions, I think it still would have passed state requirements, but they really thought these were things that ought to be in there. So, are there any other comments from the public? Any other comments for the public from the select board? In that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Art,
Second?
second by Joe. All in favor of adjourning the hearing on the town plan, say aye. Aye. Okay, so if the board is agreeable, we'll go through here and look at what BCRC suggested we add, made a few minor changes. I'm just going to skip down to where I see edits, and this one is really editorial edit, where we just moved this sentence here from policy into action. Groundwater areas should be identified and protected from contamination and incompatible development. this was in there before as a policy, we just moved it to
Action.
an action, so if that's acceptable, we'll go on. These things are deletions that we made from the Planning Commission's charge. And I would comment that the edits we made from what Planning Commission sent to us are by and large editorial. We have pushed to keep the plan as short as possible to make it readable. And I think the one exception where we really had a different policy direction we'll get to in a minute involved encouraging development in the village as opposed to the surrounding areas. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. These are deletions that we move forward with. And here is an addition that was suggested relative to this development of the general policy of the state of Vermont is to develop in town centers and villages and to keep open spaces open to the extent possible. The select board feels like Shaftsbury, while we support that idea as a useful municipal planning concept, Shaftsbury has the problem of a village center that's full in terms of the number of quarter-acre septic systems that can be put in there. And until we have a municipal sewer system, trying to channel all of our development into the village is problematic. And it's a problem we've been working with for decades. The select board, before I was even in town, did an extensive study looking at building a sewer system, and it was ultimately rejected by the voters as too expensive. So we're sort of at an impasse there. So by way of acknowledging those two conflicts, it was suggested we add a sentence that says, continue to explore options for a sewer system in the village in order to encourage compact development and to maintain open spaces, which is saying we believe it's still a good idea. If we can figure out how to build a sewer system on grants, we would do it in a heartbeat. Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll go on. This is just a note to make sure DRB knows that these maps are here to indicate where cluster development, compact development is the correct term, and I've made that change a few times in here, but that's encouraged. And it was strongly encouraged that we add back in the statement, Shaftsbury should support the conservation activities of groups such as the U.S. Forest Service and nonprofit conservation organizations. I assume that's acceptable.
Sometimes they stifle economic development, such as taking forest land out of production.
The Forest Service does?
Some organizations' goal is to leave the forest completely untouched. And that's not what.
What if we said Shaftsbury should support the forest conservation activities of groups such as the U.S. Forest Service and non-profit conservation organizations that seek to preserve forest while continuing appropriate economic development?
I guess that's one way to say it.
Does that sound acceptable?
Mike, do you understand what I'm saying?
Like what kind of group, like the Vermont Land Trust or something?
No, not the land trust, because they,
They're for profit.
pardon?
They're for profit, like
Well,
the Vermont Land Trust.
it's just that some groups think that we can't touch a tree.
Yeah, no,
And if you look at California and those places, that's why some of the reasons they're having all the
They're paying for
problems.
that.
yeah, I think the Forest Service, just from an article I read maybe a year ago, is trying to kind of get more cutting. There hasn't been much cutting just because there hasn't been demand for it. So I think of late, the Forest Service is kind of open to cutting.
Yeah, but there are some organizations that,
Yeah.
okay.
Conservation organizations that seek to balance forest preservation with economic development.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, look, working forests, it's a renewable resource. This is the idea. is
Absolutely.
you cut it and it comes back. Not to get off on, but with the town forest, there was talk of a trail to the town forest, but if you go to the town forest, there's no viewpoint. And one idea was to open up a viewpoint, but we were aware that we might get groups who simply won't, the idea of touching a single tree is unacceptable to them. I hiked the entire Long Trail when I was 18 years old, and there aren't as many viewpoints as you would think, and there should be more. But sometimes cutting on a tree is just out of bounds for some people. So.
Yep.
We get a lot of them here in Vermont. So we can do.
Under the natural resources and flooding section, it was suggested that we include a sentence that says, maintain an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan that addresses flood vulnerabilities, which
That's what we
we
just
talked
did.
about tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to do that. There's more, here we are. Slight change of wording that was suggested under the child care descriptive section that says child care centers and family child care homes provide services which contribute to the town and region's economy addition by allowing more people to enter the local labor workforce. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, so some stuff here that was suggested that we add relative to energy. We're pretty much required to say that we support the state goals for renewable energy, 90% by 2050, which we have in our plan. And under the policy, reduce the use of fossil fuels for both heating and transportation. I was wondering if we wanted to go a little further. The town should not institute zoning or other ordinance that would limit renewable energy development. I also thought maybe the town should not impose screening or other restrictions on renewable energy beyond those imposed for other types of building and industry. Just that the types of regulation that people most want to see relative to renewable energy is screening, and we've said we're not interested in going that route.
We aren't saying we won't screen it, we just won't screen it more than what we would a normal building, is that what you're trying to say?
Right. Which is pretty much that we won't screen it, because if somebody builds a house, we don't require that it be hidden from view.
Okay.
Any debate on that one? The other one was,
Has Green Mountain Power seen this?
I doubt it.
The thing that confuses me is we're an energy independent country now. We're an energy leader. So renewable energies, I don't think are going to be really a big priority at this point. But maybe. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I think you're going to see the cost of fuels going down in the future.
I think you're the only one that thinks that.
No. Nope, I'm not.
Yeah, I think the general thought is that renewable energy will reduce the cost of fuel and also bring a lot of that energy production to the local level. All the money we spend on energy now goes outside of the county, outside of Vermont, outside of the U.S.
It's also the CO2 emissions.
And the CO2 emissions, yeah, and the global warming problem. And another one here I wanted to add, just because we have an energy committee, and it'd be a good idea to task them with providing information about Brock, NeighborWorks, and other organizations that provide free and reduced cost weatherization. That's something that would have a big impact on our citizens right away if they would take advantage of this, and I think the word is just not out there. Brock operates in Rutland, and their contractors have long waiting lists. The entire town is getting, that qualifies, and a lot of people do qualify for free and reduced cost weatherization, and people are lining up to get it, and it's having a big impact. The Brock people in Bennington are sitting on their hands waiting for somebody to come in. So if we can get our energy committee to start knocking on doors and let people know that they can take advantage of this and save money on their energy bill. That's money in their pocket the day they do it.
I think that, we have to promote all that, but I don't think we should, I
Subsidize
don't
it.
know, how should we say it?
Subsidize it.
Well, I think to say that by 2050 that you're gonna have everything renewable is a little excessive. If you can get there, I mean, I'm all for wind power and solar power and all that, but the wind don't blow all the time. And obviously, I don't think the sun's shining too well up there now. So, fine, go for it and all that, but I saw a program on TV yesterday with fuel cells, hydrogen-powered fuel cells. Absolutely no exhaust at all,
Well, water vapor.
just water vapor. And, if I could drive a car like that tomorrow, I'd be the first one to get there.
BMW.
I think that's gonna, that in the end is, if you mix that in there, is gonna be a big help. And who knows where else can you go?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I have really tried to push the town plan in the direction of the things that will impact people right away, like this weatherization stuff. And like I say, if Shaftsbury can become the solar capital of the county, I think that's all to our benefit, because that's energy that's generated here and provides income here, as opposed to money that's being shipped out.
Well, it's just very expensive
The
to
money that
do.
goes out of county per year for energy costs, it's a huge, tens of millions of dollars leave the county every year.
Well, look at all the money that's gonna leave the county when you go solar. You gotta buy the panels, we don't make them here.
It's an investment that people make.
Yep.
My biggest concern with that stuff is, somewhere I read that the energy panels are only good for 20 years.
That's true. The more
And
they're
they're
supposed
about
to be
as
rated,
hazardous
they degrade.
to the environment you can find.
No one's gonna turn oil off.
No, they're not.
Solar panels are not a threat to your fossil fuels, it's just.
No, it's not.
It's not really.
Not at all.
Just having options and allowing people, we decided to,
One chink in the armor with solar, and that's temperature. They don't perform well in cold weather.
I thought that was vice versa. I thought they performed better in cold weather.
No. No,
Resistance goes down.
really.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
resistance
mine-
goes up when a wire gets hot.
Anytime I've ever had anything solar, like a solar calculator that was cold, it didn't work very well. But if it was in a warm room, it worked great.
Well, the main reason they don't generate as much electricity in the winter is because the
Days are so short.
Well, yeah, it's short days.
intensity of the sunlight is smaller
It's
and the
further
days are
away.
shorter, yeah. All right, are we in agreement on these additions?
Yep.
Okay. There were a number of items here about, that we deleted on, provide information on heat pumps and other kinds of heat pumps and biomass systems, and by way of compromise with BCRC, we agreed that task the Town Energy Committee with providing information on alternative heating systems.
Who is the Town Energy Committee?
It's a group of probably a dozen citizens who got together and decided they want to work on that issue. And they did do a walkthrough here at Town Hall a few months back, and had a couple of local energy contractors with them. Did draw our attention to our 30-year-old boiler that we have in our place. So that's another thing that's in the town plan, is that we need to be looking at dealing with that boiler before it dies in the middle of the winter. And then also on this conflict between general policy of the state and Shaftsbury's sewer problem, we added a policy in here. It says Shaftsbury promotes compact development in designated villages to the extent it's feasible given the availability of infrastructure. And I think that might be it. Yep. Any other comments or discussion? Then I would entertain a motion to accept this draft of the town plan going forward.
So moved.
Moved by Joe,
Second.
second by Art. Any more discussion here? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we will move forward with this draft of the town plan, currently titled Shaftsbury Draft Town Plan 2019-1104 BCRC hearing. All right, very good.
I thought I turned that down.
Such a catchy tune, man.
It's my jam.
All right, Dave, what's your pleasure? You want to go through other business, or do you want to talk about the budget tonight? Or we just want to sit here and laugh at Ken's phone?
Well, you want to start with the water bids?
Yeah, let's,
We'll get those out of the way, and we can do a very brief, because I changed a lot of the budget, I'll give you a quick overview, and we'll move that on to the next meeting and be more finalized.
Okay.
yeah, because
All right.
what you're saying is this, it's like you're saying.
Yeah, because I already trimmed another bunch off of that one.
Okay.
So we're at a different level already.
Okay.
I think we should wait on that.
Do we, a couple of things I wanted, well, as I said before, the ice rink and the swap shed, I think we ought to, those should be in the budget if you don't already have room to pay for them.
The ice rink isn't an issue, the swap shed can be squeezed in.
Into
Yeah, I'm not
FY '21 or,
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Can I ask what the swap shed is? I mean, I've lived here all my life, I don't know what
the swap shed started off as the Shaftsbury Community Library, as they used to call it. It used to be a collection of books that was, people would donate books, put them in the swap shed, so people could take out books. It morphed into your old toaster oven, your bicycle with one wheel.
Blender.
And a bunch of other things. Some were good, and frankly, most people were being honest about it, will admit that a lot of it was junk. And the times I worked there, I always couldn't understand how we wound up with so much stuff, but you would go over and sell someone a ticket and turn around, and there'd be a bike there without a seat in the wheel. And you don't even know how people got there that quick, but it's a problem that has to be managed, and it's difficult because Shelley has a job, the TAM employee has another job, and the volunteers who I guess were part of this way back aren't there anymore. So we do get a lot of stuff. We wound up throwing out almost everything in it because most of it had been there for years.
It's kind of like the Salvation Army, everybody kind of.
Well, I've
used that as the
suggested to
town
people
job.
too, if you really have something that you think is of value, take it to Goodwill in Bennington, and many people go there for the things, but people do want this swap shed, so I'm reducing it to the size as it was originally designed. And I was talking with Tim about it, because I know people want it, so we have to do it. It's going to be a combination of putting a new room for Shelley and make the doorway in an area where people can't just go in without her seeing it. Her area has to be separate and secure from the swap shed, because there's money, there's stickers, there's value in what's in her office. So it's just getting it up there, and it's been, I admit, not on my highest priority between the garage, this place, and everything else, but I know people want it there, so we'll put some shelves up, and we'll just try to manage it better and try and keep people from bringing things and throwing them in there that really should have gone in the compactor or in the metal pile. You know, because there was a collection of things there that were really, some were pretty gross, to tell you the truth.
Right. Okay.
But we can work that into the budget. I have a little area I can move some money from. Yeah, I haven't cut out of this yet, so.
Just have stipulations. If you're gonna bring something to the swap shed, then it has to be functional. You can't just.
Yeah, the problem is there's no one there to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows that, but people still don't want to pay for junk, so they...
But what we'll do too is we'll set up a purge. We'll just go in and, you know,
Every once in a while.
yeah, and just decide what is valuable and what has a chance, and the rest, you know, we'll have to throw in. The weight will be negligible, but it's a waste of time. But, you know, we'll vet the building on a much more frequent basis.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
we'll make it work. The books are a great idea, because there were a lot of books in there, and people did like to come in and swap out books, which is a great idea. But, you know, somebody's 20-year-old toaster oven, I'm not so sure anybody really wanted that.
Still got toast in it.
I found a keyboard there that would have cost me $50. I need, that saved me $50.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm taking stuff home from there that had value. The select board got a letter from the town clerk asking for increased hours for her assistant.
that should be personnel and in a closed session.
You
Can
want
we
to do
take that
that?
under executive session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we talking about the budget now, or you moved that?
Yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
next
it's a
line?
budget issue to me.
Oh, okay, then, I thought we were doing the water bills first.
Well, I just wanted to see if we wanted to talk about that, but you say we need to talk
No,
about that in
that's
executive session?
personnel and pay, and that should be
Okay.
executive session.
All right, then we'll talk about that later. All right, then we'll skip over the budget and go to water bid openings.
Okay.
So we have first the,
Let's do the operation and maintenance of the water system first.
okay,
We have one bid from Abtech in Arlington. And what I'm going to pass over is the cost bid. Everything came in two sections on both of these. There's only one bidder for the operation, and this is his cost proposal here. I won't pass around all the operational stuff because nobody's going to read this tonight. I'll go through this stuff and then pass around what's the pertinent part of it.
This is to take Jim's place?
Yeah, to run the water system. However, this bid does not include billing or shut-offs, restarts, or anything other than the simple operation of the system, which is probably what Jim spends the least amount of his time on.
yeah, and it looks like the bid is $39,000. And that's compared to, we're spending about $25,000
Yeah,
now
not even.
for the,
For what Jim does, yeah, maybe, yeah, not even.
so this is more than we want to spend.
Yeah, but we can review that with his
And it
technical
doesn't
package.
include the billing, which is
It
what he
doesn't
spends
include the
most of his
billing.
time on,
Yeah.
so.
And
Okay.
collections, so we'll take that and I'll write up a summary for the board when we look at the,
So is that billed to the water department?
yeah, everything with water is an enterprise fund, it's totally separate than the town functions. Even when our road crew guys operate a backhoe or anything, I bill the water utility for their hourly rate, the equipment rate, because most people in town do not get water, so. Yeah, the first, this is for the preliminary engineering survey for the replacement of the water main. And the first proposal is from Du Bois and King. We received 4 proposals for this one.
Okay.
And again, these are just the cost proposal. As you can see, some are quite thick, but these others are the engineering part of it. So once
Okay.
we can break those down, I'll put out some information to you all.
Oh, they gave us flash drives with it.
Oh, good.
Okay, so, looks like we got 5 copies of it here. Town of Shaftsbury Water Engineering Study, Cost Proposal, Du Bois and King.
That's a good note, too. Each bid has 5 copies, so I'll get everybody a copy of them.
Lump sum fee for the scope of work under this project is $9,000.
They're just gonna go through and tell us,
Hearing $9,000, I gotta read what they said in the engineering part. I'm a little bit,
yeah, well,
Yeah, 'cause it looks like,
I don't think we're gonna make any decisions.
yeah. Well, I don't even know how to answer your question out of a $9,000 bid. I'll have to see what they say. It said in here.
Okay.
Yeah, because. that's
yeah,
not
I mean, they've
sounding-
got, that doesn't really make sense because they've broken this out by hours for senior engineer, hydraulic modeling, project engineer. Total hours is 100 hours. Hourly rates range from 140 to $98 per hour. And even 98 times 100 is
It's more than that.
$9,800, not $9,000.
Yeah. I think deeper into it, we'll
Okay.
be able to, I think these are all basically going to come out like this, that we're going to need a lot more research into it, which I'll,
But the original, what are we asking for? We're just asking for someone to tell us how,
well, the RFP is like 6 pages long, because we're asking them to give us different proposals on what type of pipe to use, how to place the pipe, whether it's pipe bursting, Frenching, or whatever, the permitting process of the state, right down to the full engineering of the project. So there's multiple steps to it. That's why when you said 9,000, I was like, wow, that's either the bargain of the year or we're missing a lot of
Yeah,
steps
so
there.
we don't really understand that number, but
Yeah.
that's the number that's there.
The next one's AES Northeast. They're out of Plattsburgh, New York. And again, there's going to be 5 in there, and like I said, I'll break these up and try and make sense of the engineering part, and send that around to everybody.
Okay, AES Northeast. Need water system cost proposal. The total number that's on the front page here is $13,950.
Sounds like it's gonna be hard to figure out what each one of them is saying.
It just
But
takes
those
some time to
numbers
sit
are,
down and-
I mean, we were expecting all these numbers to be quite a bit bigger, weren't
quite a bit bigger, which makes me think there's several more pages to read in there before we come up with this. But that's the problem with opening engineering bids like this, because they really need to be read lately.
Okay.
It sounds like it's gonna be quite a range of what they're saying they're gonna
Well,
do.
and that's telling you what they're going to try to do what's in here, which is really the key. It's what they say they're doing in this packet over here. The next one is from the Dufresne Group out of Manchester Center.
Isn't there a guideline that these guys have all gotta go by?
Yeah, I'm sure, well, there's engineering
Well, we have
standards in
our
the state.
RFP that
Yeah,
they put
yeah.
together, yeah.
So, but each person can tweak it a different way.
Well, right, well, that's what I'm saying, it's,
They have to meet the minimum of what we wanted.
okay. As long as somewhere we can come up with a line that
Oh, yeah.
it's
yeah.
all the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, this proposal provides for a total fixed fee of $16,000 as outlined above.
Dave, I wouldn't open that one, it's going the wrong direction.
I know.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought didn't we think we were looking at tens of thousands of dollars?
Yeah, let's go back to envelope A. Yeah.
So,
Too sharp to dive up for that one.
All right, the last one is from Otter Creek.
Was Otter Creek the guy that sat?
Yeah,
there? So he understood what we,
Yeah, and Otter Creek, and it's fine, because some of these companies even asked, they said, what happened to Otter
John-
Creek? And I said,
John-
well, this is a public bid, so everybody
Yes.
can bid on it, you know? But yeah, they were very helpful in putting all this together. Oh, yeah.
and the total here looks to be 16,500.
It's a good thing I don't have a fifth bid, right? Well, like I said, I'll get these, I'll break these up, because there'll be enough information to send them out to everybody. And I'll start looking through them, take Jim through them, who knows some of this, and our consultant, and try and come up with a reasonable explanation for all this. But I am a little surprised now. From what we were talking with John about, I was expecting higher amounts. So all these are kind of,
Acceptable.
Yeah,
If that's the real number.
yeah, much better than I was anticipating, that's for sure,
Yeah.
so.
And I think you're gonna find that somebody's,
Smoke and mirrors?
well, yeah, there might be some of that in there.
Well, it's all in these, it's all in
Yeah.
what they actually say they're doing. What'll be the
Right, but I mean,
interesting
there's a lot of that stuff you can word it different ways and twist it around.
Yeah, because I mean, some of those envelopes look like they've got $9,000 worth of paperwork in them already.
part. No, some are,
I agree.
I know.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll go through these and I get these back out to you as quick as I can,
Okay.
yeah. And we might call in some engineers we know for any technical questions we have.
Okay.
You're gonna have to, Dave, I think.
All right, shall we move through our other business agenda? It actually ended up being kind of long because we had a number of things that added. We checked off the Shire's paperwork. We have done the bid openings. One thing I added here, we talked about last time, Ken, you have been suggesting that we put a town vote to move the budget vote from town meeting to Australian ballot. And one of the things that, well, we seem to kind of be undecided about how we really felt about that as a board. And I suggested maybe I could put an article in the paper asking what the town thought about it. I haven't done that yet because I kind of am not sure what that article would be saying. Because if we put it to the vote, we'll find out the answer, whether or not the town supports it or not. So I think it kind of behooves us to either decide to do it or not, and not ask whether we should ask, which is essentially what I had volunteered to do last time, and then realized what I'd done when I got home.
What's an Australian ballot?
It's paper ballot. We go to town meeting
Okay.
and
I've
we
just
vote.
never heard of an Australian.
Yeah, we go to town meeting, right now we vote on the town budget by whoever shows up by show of hands or voice vote. And then, for example, the school vote is done the next day at the ballot box by Australian ballot. And just by way of gathering information, the Secretary of State had some information, and said that 172 out of 238 towns, that's 72%, vote on their town budgets by Australian ballot. And
Do we know, Tim, what percentage of people was at the floor ballot floor vote last year?
well, there were probably 50 people there,
Yeah.
so we have a town of
How many votes?
3,500, so there's the math. It's
Yeah,
it's
I mean, that's my reason behind it.
yeah, it's a
You know, I mean,
around
if you did
1%.
write a letter, my suggestion would be that because of those numbers, it was why we had the question.
Well, it is the case that participation at town meeting has declined steadily since I've been in town, and it is the case that you are vulnerable. A small group of people could control your budget vote, for example, and cause you a lot of heartaches if that happened. That hasn't happened, but I think the question should be asked seriously, is it time that we follow the example of what appears to be most towns and school boards and put our budget on the paper ballot to be voted on by a larger fraction of the citizens of the town?
At this point, I'm against it. I still think that the input by the public at the floor meeting is valid. This year, there was a lot of things discussed. We got $40,000 more for gravel, which we wouldn't have gotten. We get a chance to explain we still would do that, but if somebody wants a question, we can dig down, line item and check. I just think it's the Vermont way, but it is true that there's I can remember standing room only, that gym would be full. But
You can still have a discussion.
no, you can't.
Okay, yeah.
Well, you can tell, but
You could have your discussion at the floor meeting, and then you could say, well,
no, if somebody wants to change something, it can't be done because the ballots have to be printed beforehand and warned. The way it's warned is the way it's going to be voted on.
That's correct.
right, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, you understand you couldn't change it, but you could have a discussion of whether you thought it should be approved or not.
The discussion is moot because
And my thing is just the participation of it. There's so few people go over there nowadays that you can get 25 guys together and have one little agenda, and they can make it hard for the whole town.
I'm willing to take that chance.
Joe?
I'll have to give that some thought.
I'd say we can give it some thought for maybe another meeting or two, but if we're going to put it on the March ballot, we're going to be deciding that this fall. It's going to happen.
It's to
pretty
be
soon.
no later than
I think I'm gonna canvass the area and just ask some
second
people.
meeting in December. After that, we won't be able to do it.
Right. So, for what it's worth, I have mixed feelings about it. I was actually kind of leaning toward Ken's idea that that seems to be the way everybody's going.
Are we sure that we can, a vote of the selectmen can change it without the vote?
No, it has to be put on the ballot for March.
Which would then,
It wouldn't go into effect until March of '21.
that's right,
And then they'd be voting on the '22 budget,
that's right.
'21.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's continue to think about it, but realize we got to make a decision to put it on the ballot or not
Yep.
in the next month. The other thing that came up recently, a couple of businesses came through the zoning office that couldn't find a way to get done in Shaftsbury. One was somebody wanted to reopen the Second Chance Dog Kennel as a dog kennel. We don't have dog kennels approved anywhere in town, actually, and not there. That dog kennel has been inactive for more than a year, so it can't be grandfathered. So it has to obey current zoning, and current zoning says there are no dog kennels. The other one was someone wanted to, and that's on, of course, on Route 7A. The other one was somebody who wanted to open like a therapy resort for veterans to do dog therapy. And that one hit a wall in a couple of ways that, again, it would essentially be a dog kennel, which is not specifically allowed. There is a catch-all term where it could possibly be allowed, but the one that would probably stymie it is they wanted to have overnight stays for the veterans in this place, and that is essentially a hotel, and hotels in Shaftsbury only are allowed along the roadside commercial zone on 7A. They're not allowed in rural residential. And it just seemed to me, and Art and I talked about it, and he agreed that something like a place where veterans can get dog therapy and spend the night in a nice setting back in the country seems like a good thing. Certainly there are issues involved there, and what we were thinking we would do is task the Planning Commission with looking into those two things to see if it's appropriate for Shaftsbury, if there's a way to do it that would take into, concerns that people are probably going to have about barking dogs and that sort of thing. And another one that came up while I was talking with Mike Chianowski on our Planning Commission about the second chance on 7A is that we have zones like around the Chocolate Barn, which includes Clear Brook and the art studio that's near there, which are essentially commercial areas that are not part of the roadside commercial zone. And it begged the question whether or not we should expand the commercial zone to acknowledge the situation on the ground, which is those are commercial areas. In much the same way that we rezoned Parent Acres last year to Village Center from rural residential because all of the lots are quarter-acre lots. It's a Village Center is the situation on the ground rather than rural residential. So we were thinking that would be a good thing to task the Planning Commission with. Any comments on that?
One thought is that speaking about increasing the roadside commercial, if we did change it, I would be opposed at grandfathering them in the way they are. I think they should meet the requirements that a roadside commercial would have, which would mean adequate parking and not on the edge of the road. Mm-hmm. So, in a way, but I just don't think they should be grandfathered in if we do change it.
Yeah, agreed. And I was really thinking kind of in bigger, should we expand roadside commercial in general and not just should we spot zone second chance to be a dog kennel, but should we maybe have roadside commercial, a couple of spots of roadside commercial around the Chocolate Barn and Clear Brook area, and maybe up there at in the second chance area as well.
And of course, they're going to say that's spot zoning.
I think
I wasn't clear if spot zoning meant literally, if you took the old Second Chance building and said, okay, that is now commercial, that's one parcel, as opposed to, we were talking about the Chocolate Barn area because there's an artist studio, the Chocolate Barn, Clear Brook, there's an antique shop, and there's actually another, I'm not sure what they're doing, there's one more business there.
It's a fence company.
Making fences. So there really is a little commercial cluster there, and we don't acknowledge it. I assume it's all grandfathered in, even though Clearbrook actually wasn't there. I think that's a right to farm situation, although I'm saying it on camera. They might be pushing the boundaries of what they sell in their farm stand as a farm stand, So I think the town should acknowledge our commercial zone, and in a way what it says, if it's not zone commercial, is that, hey, when you shut your doors and you're done for a year, you've abandoned your use and we wash our hands of this commercial activity. I think Shaftsbury should fundamentally be encouraging commercial activity, and acknowledging our commercial zones would be one step toward doing that. And it would allow someone to, a business could lay out. If you have that pressure of saying, hey, I'm going to close the doors, my renovation might take longer than a year. Am I going to lose my zoning? It would just remove that uncertainty as well. So. If you look at the existing commercial in Shaftsbury, it exists, but there aren't that many parcels for sale. So for the first hurdle for a business owner is to say, okay, now I have to start approaching property owners and making an offer on their property. So a business coming to Shaftsbury would probably find it hard to find a location just for sale, much less the other hurdles firm close. It would be a way, Ken, you had come in maybe a year ago to the Planning Commission and talked about running commercial all the way up to the Arlington border, which, I guess, I know the BCRC doesn't like that idea, so maybe kind of a half measure to, move in that direction.
But, also the state wants us to congregate things here where there isn't the infrastructure to handle anymore, as we talked about the sewer system. And other towns in the state were developed 200 years ago because water power was the thing, so they're in a flood zone, and we're encouraging growth or concentration in flood zones.
Right, or even just, our commercial center now is, it goes back to Shaftsbury's history, and we have a general store, which is a behemoth of a building with no parking.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work anymore and so people have to have the ability to do things that work, and kind of try to find some ways to say yes. We found a lot of ways to say no in the last 50 years, so
Yep.
try to look at it a little differently.
Well,
It wouldn't hurt to give them a task. I'm not opposed to giving them a task.
yeah, okay.
They got it.
All right, why don't we make that a motion that says the select board tasked the planning commission with investigating the appropriateness and feasibility of expanding roadside commercial zone to a larger part of Route 7A, and also investigating whether or not dog kenneling businesses are appropriate for the town, and in particular, this idea of a veterans retreat that involved dog therapy could be placed in rural residential.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, so I don't know if dog kennels are specifically mentioned, but if they're not, part of removing that table of uses was to remove this prescribed table of what you can do here, and it was very prescriptive. So my guess is that dog kenneling, unless it's specifically disallowed somewhere in the bylaw, which I'm not aware of, would be kind of essentially up to the DRB, and they would take into neighbor concerns. The lodging thing's a little different because whenever you have over 3, I believe, units, you get into your lodging establishment, and we don't allow that outside of roadside commercial. So as of right now, it's just off the table, except in roadside commercial. So.
Right. Yeah, there is a catch-all phrase in the bylaws that says that if something is not specifically allowed, if its impact on the neighborhood is similar to the impact of things that are allowed, the DRB can choose to allow it. So something like dog kennel could perhaps be pursued in that way. But it's still I think it's worth evaluating because it seems like we're specifically disallowing it now almost. Just the word dog is not mentioned in our bylaws.
Which to me means you're just kind of giving common sense power to the DRB, I think, and it would be up to them to say, hey, are we going to put 50 barking dogs next to a neighbor? They'd have to, unless somewhere in the bylaw it says no dogs, then I think the DRB has the ability to weigh and measure the impacts and make a decision, on their own without, I don't believe there's a bylaw that says no dog kennel.
No, but there was a misunderstanding where the zoning administrator was remembering a previous bylaw that had specifically disallowed it. So I think it's worth reinvestigating and perhaps specifically allowing so that we can be more business friendly in that regard.
Like Franzando is there, that would be grandfathered in?
It would be grandfathered in, yeah. So I think I've suggested wording for a motion. Does anybody want to make that motion?
I do.
Art?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Joe. So that was to task the planning commission with looking into the feasibility of the dog therapy resort in rural residential, expanding roadside commercial. To include, essentially the situation on the ground. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that motion is approved 4-0-0. So you have a task.
All right.
I'll report to the planning commission in an email what we've talked about here. One last item we had under other business, we got a letter from the Attorney General, T.J.
Yeah.
Donovan, saying that that he would like all the towns to join him in the lawsuit against Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family relative to the opioid crisis. They called it putting towns in a negotiation class, I believe was the term. It's essentially like joining a class action lawsuit. We are part of it unless we specifically decide to opt out before November 22nd, I believe.
So if we don't vote, we're automatically in?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're automatically in unless we tell them specifically not to.
So if we're all in favor of maybe getting some money out of
$1,000.
Big Pharma,
Is that it?
then we
Yeah,
don't have to do anything.
$1,083.
Okay.
We got what?
$1,088. If there's a $1 billion settlement, we get $1,088.
This is what will happen of the opioid crisis?
Yeah, in a hypothetical 1 billion gross payout, Bennington County would be allocated 82,351, and we would be allocated 1,088 out of that
Let's
82,000.
say how much the lawyers get.
Probably about,
Half of it.
well, that last class action we were in, the lawyers got 5.7 million, and all the nationwide litigants got like 5.3 million.
That's why lawyers are in business.
We got $134.
Okay.
And you won.
Okay, so without objection, we will not opt out of the opioid class action suit. Okay. All right, any other business, Dave?
No, except the budget. The next meeting, I think we should devote a lot of time to the budget. I think we should have the budget done before we go to the second meeting for this. Meeting that I probably will not be here for, because I have to go to Buffalo to take my kid back to college because Amtrak doesn't have any seats left. So, but if we could schedule some time and I could get a lot of the department heads in here on the next meeting. We'd either have a meeting before that or start the meeting a little earlier in an executive session to go over the parts that aren't, some payroll things to be discussed in executive session.
So you're saying you will not be here on the 18th?
No, the 18th is when I'd like to finish the budget.
Oh, okay.
I won't be here on December 2nd.
Oh, for the
Yeah,
next hearing.
I would be very close if I get back by,
Okay, yeah,
and that's the second meeting on this, so
right,
combining these two is going to make for a very long evening.
yeah.
I'd like to make a motion, we have an brief executive session tonight that'll help him work on the budget.
Okay, we have a motion to move into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.